In 1866, the global economy lived and died by the sea. International survival required an absolute dependence on maritime shipping, with steam and wind serving as the only links between distant continents. That stability shattered when captains began reporting an enormous, spindle-shaped object moving through the water. It was occasionally phosphorescent and moved with a velocity that surpassed any known whale. The math didn't add up. Logbooks from the Governor Higginson and the Columbus placed the object at 2 points on the globe separated by 700 nautical leagues. It had covered that distance in just 3 days, a feat of locomotion that defied every law of marine biology. This information traveled instantly through the Atlantic cable, fueling a global controversy. As the mystery spread, insurance companies began raising their rates, effectively paralyzing international trade out of fear of the unknown. Humanity was facing an entity that resisted classification. It was a phantom that threatened to sever the very supply lines that sustained 19th century civilization. The mystery shifted from rumor to physical reality when the Cunard steamer Scotia was struck by something sharp and penetrating in the middle of the Atlantic. When the ship entered dry dock, engineers found a puncture that proved they weren't looking for a shifting reef or a submerged wreck. This was the forensic evidence, a perfect hole in the shape of an isosceles triangle. Whatever hit the ship had the power to punch through 1 3/8 inches of solid iron plate before withdrawing itself with a retrograde motion. Professor Pierre Aronnax tried to explain the damage through the lens of natural history. He hypothesized a colossal, undiscovered species of narwhal, equipped with an ivory tusk hard enough to pierce a ship's hull like a drill. While staying at the Fifth Avenue Hotel in New York, Aronnax received an official invitation from the U.S. Secretary of Marine. The Navy was commissioning a high-speed frigate, the Abraham Lincoln, to hunt and destroy the beast. Confronted with an unexplainable threat, the world's default reaction was to label it a monster and organize its destruction. For months, the Abraham Lincoln searched the North Pacific without success. The fruitless campaign pushed the crew towards mutiny as the deadline approached. When contact finally occurred, the creature humiliated the American Navy. Even at a maximum steam speed of 18.5 miles an hour, the frigate couldn't gain a single yard on the target. The hunt reached a climax when Ned Land hurled his harpoon at point-blank range. Instead of piercing flesh, the weapon struck a hard body with a sonorous metallic ring. A massive collision immediately followed. 2 enormous waterspouts crashed over the deck, throwing Aronnax and his companions into the churning water as the frigate disappeared. The survivors scrambled onto the object. Beneath them, they felt a smooth, polished surface. There were no scales, only lines of iron rivets driven into joints of sheet iron. They were standing on a human construction. The biological mystery had evaporated. The monster was an industrial machine with a sophistication unknown to any government on Earth. Inside the vessel, Aronnax met Captain Nemo. The story shifted from a fight for survival to an exploration of a technological anomaly. The interior was a jarring contrast of war and culture. The steel hull housed a library of 12,000 books and a museum filled with the treasures of the surface world. But this raised a massive engineering question. How could a vessel of this size maintain light, heat, and a speed of 50 miles per hour without returning to port for coal? Nemo's secret was the sea itself. His engines extracted sodium from seawater to generate electricity, powering the entire vessel. This chemical process created a continuous energy loop. By drawing fuel from the surrounding water, the Nautilus achieved total autonomy. Nemo had weaponized the ocean's chemistry to live entirely outside the limits of 19th century logistics. Captain Nemo was not a naval officer for a rival nation. He was a stateless rogue who had intentionally seceded from humanity. He rejected the surface world entirely. To Nemo, the continents were the domain of despots and unjust laws, a world he chose to leave behind for what he called the unendurable worldly yoke. He traded the chaos of the land for a silent realm. 30 feet below the surface, the reach of terrestrial governments ended, and Nemo was free to pursue art and science in undisturbed silence. The Panic of 1866 was the result of a massive miscalculation. The world feared a mindless, destructive beast, but they were actually being outmaneuvered by a human who had mastered a new form of energy. The hunt ended with a realization that went beyond technology. Nemo had used his genius to build a perfect sanctuary, choosing to live in a monkish room at the bottom of the sea because he believed the world above no longer deserved his presence.